And what's up, boys and girls? It's your pal right here, the one and only Black Avenger, aka the Black Azrael Lee Sanders of the RCWR show and Impact Showdown, welcoming you to another cool DVD unveiling and review, where this go round we're tackling RF Video's shoot interview with former WWE superstar Ricardo Rodriguez. Now, for those of you hardcore WWE fans, you all know that WWE released Ricardo from his WWE contract earlier this year. It was a little bit during the summertime. It was part of a sweep that they did as they had released other superstars. A lot of us were very surprised by Ricardo's release. Those of you that have been following the career of Ricardo may remember him on the independent circuits from 2006 to 2010 when he had worked with Beyond Backyard Wrestling, Shakira, Dragon Gate, just to name a few, before he got signed to a WWE developmental deal, which had him reporting to Florida Championship Wrestling for about a year in 2010 before being called up to the WWE from 2010 right on up until this calendar year of summer 2014. He has really not said anything about his release from the WWE, as he has exclusively given anything you want to know only to RF Video. So without any further ado, let's go on ahead. Let's open this bad boy up. As soon as I found out RF Video was going to be talking to him, I said, all right, I gotta make sure I pre-order this, as this is one I'm definitely pumped up for. And it's funny that we're talking about Ricardo Rodriguez, who, by the way, I think was just doing phenomenal work with Alberto Del Rio. I thought that duo had a lot going on. They complemented each other very, very well, and I just thought it was really messed up that they had broke those two guys up. They should have kept them together, because it just kind of seemed like both of their careers, when you really think about it in retrospect, at least in the WWE, their careers respectively weren't the same after they had got broken up. Also, heads up, Alberto Del Rio is going to be doing a U-shoot with Kayfabe Commentaries. You have until November 4th to submit your questions via email, or if you want to submit a 60-second video, you could do it as well. We'll post the link down below. I just want to give you guys that heads up, just in case you guys may also be wondering what's going on with Alberto Del Rio. All right, so we got the DVD. Nothing else is in here. That's good. Bam! Feast your eyes on that, boys and girls. Lovely camera lady, zoom in on that pretty good. That looks pretty good there. Oh yeah, you got a nice good visual right there. Nice good visual. I like it. Looks pretty good. Ricardo shoot interview. Let's flip it. Let's see what we got on the back here. Oh, this is going to be kind of tricky. Let's see what we got here. You might know him as a wrestler, commentator, or Alberto Del Rio's personal ring announcer, but RF Video will know him as the guy who gave us a solid 3-hour interview and takes us through the trials and tribulations of Ricardo Rodriguez, from his rise from the CA indie scene to making it into the WWE. Ricardo sits down with RF Video as he holds nothing back for his first ever post-WWE interview. He made it clear from the start that he would not sugarcoat any of his answers and would be very open and honest with us, as he wanted to get his side of the story out there on why he left the WWE on his terms, and he was super open to all of our questions, making this interview so much fun to listen to. If you are a WWE fan over the past 8 years, you are going to love this interview, as there are endless WWE locker room stories on all your favorite wrestlers from the WWE. Ricardo has so many locker room and road stories about all of the top acts in the WWE. Who did he feel the office pushed too much, and who did he want to see get on TV more? Will he ever go to TNA or AAA? And will he ever want to be back with ADR? If you are a WWE fan, this is a must because there are stories about all of the top acts, and Ricardo was not scared to share his viewpoints with the RF Video fan base worldwide. Well, I'm sold on that. 3 hours too. Sounds like maybe RF Video is kind of taking a little bit of a clue from shows like ours when we review their DVDs and other shows. Remember, within recent, some of the shoot DVDs that they've been doing, it's been a little bit too long. It's been about 4, 5, 6. I think we reviewed one that might have been a little bit over 6 hours. I don't know if it might have been from RF Video, but we know how RF Video, they usually like to do shoot interviews that's past 4 hours for sure. So it's kind of nice that they're kind of trimming it down just a little bit. I think that's cool. That way you don't kind of feel like you're sitting through the motions and coming to that point where you're like, when is this going to be over? Even if it's good, you know, it's kind of like, when is it going to be over? Because it's kind of exhausting or whatnot. All right, so let's see here. All right, looks pretty good. Not bad. All right. I see the flash went off, but we're still recording, which is cool. So what we're going to do for you guys right now, we're going to go on ahead and we're going to pop this bad boy in the DVD player. And we're going to go on ahead and watch it. And as far as our DVD review goes, well, that's actually getting ready to happen right about now. It's now time for our DVD review portion for this Ricardo shoot interview. You know, I'm not going to go into all the specifics about this DVD for a number of reasons, but the number one overall is because this DVD kicks ass. So forgive me if I don't go all full in depth on this one, but let me tell you, overall, when you watch this DVD, you can't really help but come away saying to yourself, you know, that Ricardo, he's one cool motherfucker. This seems like a guy that I could actually kick on back, have a couple of brews with, and maybe talk all things wrestling for like an entire day, just pick his brain, or maybe go into a number of different other topics outside of wrestling. He just really comes off like a well-rounded, down-to-earth type of guy, and I definitely connect to him as far as his time living in California, because there was that 1 year where I had lived in California, and I had told you guys on a previous episode of the RCWR show about that year and experience, as I was there pretty much when the O.J. Simpson crap was going down. I was also there when we had the riots going on. I mean, you talk about being in the center of California in those early 90s, right at the time where at the height, you had the Crips taking on the Bloods, the whole drug thing. It's just everything. It was just crazy back then as compared to how it is now. But Ricardo is just one of those type of guys. You talk about a man paying his dues. Here's a man that has a really interesting story as far as how he got into wrestling. And one of the things that just jumped at me the most with regards to his story was how he wasn't always a fan of American pro wrestling. He actually did not start getting involved as a fan for that genre not until like about 2001. So pretty much since he was growing up as a kid all the way up until then, he loved lucha libre. That's all it was for him. And originally, he didn't have any intentions of working in the WWE. When his mind was set that he wanted to be involved in the wrestling business, he thought for sure he was going to be working for some lucha libre promotion. He thought he was going to be working for AAA, wherever. He never in his wildest dreams thought he was going to be working in the WWE. And the way that he began his career in the wrestling industry, basically, he was paying his dues. It started off with him working for a couple of bootleg backyard wrestling type of federations. He wanted to learn the craft,
and it says he was very skilled in Photoshop, creating graphic designs, banners, things of that nature. Basically, a deal was worked out where he would design really cool kick-ass flyers for them and all that, handle all their graphics, and in exchange, he basically gets some ring time. He'd get training and all of that. So that's really how he was able to break in there, and he would train for a few months. From there, eventually, he would start branching out on his own, trying to get a number of odd jobs as a wrestler. And to just hear some of the shit that he would have to go through, sometimes Ricardo didn't even get paid at some of these venues he did. It would actually just be about a handshake and a hot dog, all just to get the experience. That's it in a nutshell. So take this young man who's working during the day, and then he's trying to get a little bit of sleep in because he has to do some type of training at night or whatever, and the cycle just kind of repeats itself for several days. He doesn't have access to a hotel room because money is so tight for him. Again, he's high off of the experience. He wants nothing more but the experience. He's going to the nearby McDonald's. He's getting like $1 cheeseburger. He's getting a bottle of water from the sink or whatever. And he's sleeping in his car. He gets up the next day. He goes find the nearest gas station. He's basically washing up that way to go do whatever live show he has to do. And then after that, maybe he has to go to work. It's kind of like one of those type of vicious cycles. But his story in itself is a very interesting one, as he would also help set up the rings, help out with production, things of that nature. This guy was literally paying his dues as far as getting into the business, and it's something that we don't really hear about today, at least when you look at promotions such as TNA or you look at promotions such as WWE. So here's a guy right here that really can appreciate the business, so much so that another story that I thought was very interesting that he told during this shoot was this one incident where he was at a locker room. This was in WWE, mind you. He was at a locker room. At the time, Dolph Ziggler was the World Heavyweight Champion, and I can't remember the venue they were at, but the locker room, everybody was going in there, all the guys, everybody was crammed in there, and you pretty much had to go in there, find a spot to put your shit down or whatever. And for him, he played it smart. He knew all he needed was one or two little items, so he had a little small book bag as opposed to some of the other guys that would bring like their suitcases and all that other crazy shit. So he saw that in a little corner, the Shield, this was right when they were still brand new. The Shield guys, they all had big duffel bags in the corner. It was taking up a lot of space. So Dolph Ziggler comes in. Keep in mind, Dolph Ziggler, he had just did a full media blitz that day. For those of you that's not experienced with the whole WWE full media blitz, basically, it's like, heaven forbid, you got one of those weekends where it's like a pay-per-view or WWE is in your respected neck of the woods or whatever. Well, WWE, they're going to need one or two superstars, divas that can make their rounds and do the full-blown media blitz. So for Dolph Ziggler, he was the full-blown media blitz guy that day. So when you're that guy, your day begins at like 3, 4 in the morning, and you're on the radio shows, you're on the TV shows, you're doing it all right? You really do not have time to, throughout that whole day, catch up on a nap or whatever. You're just pretty much wide awake. You're going at it full throttle. So pretty much right after Dolph Ziggler did all the blitz, he had to go to the arena, get ready for the show and everything. Gets to the locker room. He couldn't find any room to put his stuff down. So Ricardo, he actually ended up talking to one of the referees. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mike Chioda. I'm not sure. But he had told him, hey, look, Shield, they got a lot of space occupied in one little corner. Could you maybe ask them if they can move their stuff so Ziggler can put his stuff right there? After all, he's the World Heavyweight Champion, And some of you might be like, that's paying respect to those that were there before you, okay? And Chioda, he talked to them. They were able to do that. And it was interesting how Ricardo mentioned that story, because he said there used to be a time, at least in the WWE, where one wrestler could go up to young guys, young rookies, such as The Shield, and say, hey man, can you maybe move your stuff over there because the champ's here? But now you have to go find a middleman to smooth things out, because some wrestlers, they may take offense to that, and then they go high up in talent relations, they go complain, and he doesn't like how it's structured now. He wishes it would kind of go back to the way it was before. Also, talking about paying respect to your elders and all that, something else that he said is kind of gone today, which is paying that respect to those that are there before you. He mentioned something as simple as being on an airplane, for an example. Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, they're sitting in coach. Him and maybe Alberto Del Rio, they're sitting in first class. Bear in mind, they don't have any championship belts or whatever like that. You know, those guys were there before them. Okay, so the right thing to do is say, hey, look, let's switch. You guys sit first class, we'll take coach. Little things like that type of respect for those that came before you, it's not there anymore in the WWE. And I kind of find it a little bit alarming that that type of respect isn't there anymore for those that paved the way before some of these young stars. Now, as far as how Ricardo had first got involved in the business, he basically had ended up working a couple of different times with, I believe it was Jesse Hernandez. And Jesse Hernandez has said to him, hey, look, from time to time, WWE, they come through these respective parts in California. Would you maybe like to do a little bit of work for them when they come in the area? And Ricardo was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So Hernandez, he had passed along his information, as he was mainly working with Hernandez, Joey Ryan, but on this day, it was actually Jesse Hernandez that passed along his information to the WWE. So WWE, they came through there, and Ricardo was able to get a tryout. Things had worked pretty good. He passed along his contact information once again. He didn't think he was going to hear back from them, but a couple of days later, they had asked him, hey, what are you doing next week? Because we need an announcer at this event. Apparently, the other person that they had originally, who was supposed to be a Spanish ring announcer, for some weird reason, he couldn't do the event. So they went to Ricardo. Ricardo was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, no problem. And after that, it was him. And look at the people that were brought in right along with him at the same time. The other guys that were jockeying for a WWE contract. You had Alex Kozlov, who was in there. You also had Alexander Rusev, that was right along with Ricardo. And long story short, all three of those guys, they ended up getting signed at the same time. What was very unique about Ricardo getting into the WWE was the fact that he started off on the road. And you guys know you're wrestling enough, when you're on the road, you're getting money. That's how you're making money. A lot of folks are under the impression that the wrestlers are making their money whatever Raw or SmackDown is on. That's not true. The real money is at those house shows, those live events, those pay-per-views. That's where it is. So just imagine being Ricardo, gets signed into the WWE. He first starts off on the road. He's bringing in that money instead of immediately reporting to the facility, at the time FCW, because that's the way it should have went down. Now, he was still going to get a little bit of money, but that was the only type of money he was going to be getting, was from FCW. But the fact that he was doing the live events, he was on the road with the guys, and then 1-2 times a week he was going to FCW, and he was also getting money for that. It made a lot of people in FCW not like him. I mean, for a good minute, there were a lot of people that didn't like him. Eventually, though, he found himself becoming buddies with one Xavier Woods. I thought that was a very interesting tale there in itself. Speaking of tales, those of you that may not be aware of this, you guys that know your NXT promotion, well, you guys know about the Ascension, Victor and Connor. Well, it turns out Ricardo had an original vision for the Ascension Originally, it was supposed to be a 7-member group. Dusty Rhodes, he felt that that was one too many people, as at the time Dusty Rhodes was the one that was handling NXT and all that. He was like, that's way too many people. So Ricardo was like, okay, well, let's tone it down to 5. And he was really inspired by one of my all-time favorite movies starring Al Pacino, The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves. And he wanted to kind of go in that type of direction, like as far as setting up the Ascension and setting up his character and all that. And originally, Ricardo was going to be in there. He was going to be the mouthpiece. Shaw Guerrero, you guys know that is the daughter of the late Eddie Guerrero. Primo Colon, Kenneth Cameron, Conor O'Brien. That was supposed to be the original Ascension. 1 week, Ricardo comes in, and Dusty Rhodes, he's like, hey, baby, let me talk to you for a minute. You're out the Ascension. And Ricardo's like, what? You're out the Ascension, baby. We gonna go in a different direction. You're not in it anymore, baby. And that was pretty much it. And pretty much, you can imagine how pissed off Ricardo was the next time he sees Victor and Connor, and they're doing the whole vampire gothic gimmick. He's like, no, that's not what was supposed to happen with these guys. What the hell, you know? And it's just one of the many cycles that Ricardo would go through. Every single time he would come up with a really good idea, or he was coming off as if he was really proving his value in certain areas in the WWE. It just kind of seemed like each time he was climbing, he would meet some type of resistance, you know? I mean, I didn't even know about this until I was actually watching the shoot, and maybe you hardcore Ricardo fans may know, but Ricardo always began his wrestling career as a wrestler. He trained to be a wrestler, and something that I just cannot wrap my brain around, for the time that he was there in the WWE for at least a couple of years, nobody knew of his wrestling background. All they said to themselves was, here's this fat guy over here. Apparently he's a ring announcer, a valet or something like that. Nobody really knew that he knew how to wrestle, that he could put on a very entertaining match. And you can't help, when you hear that, say to yourself, who dropped the ball on that? Because that's pretty freaking serious. I mean, not only can the guy wrestle, but he could put on a pretty damn good entertaining match. I mean, it might not be a Eddie Guerrero or a Kurt Angle match, but it's still pretty damn entertaining. So you're kind of wondering to yourself, who dropped the ball right there when you hear stuff like that. But, you know, from there, he immediately had got paired up with Alberto Del Rio. He talked about what it was like working with him. At first, it was just pretty professional, but eventually the two of them, they started to find common interests, and their chemistry just bouncing off of one another. They're genuine friends. You know, they get along with each other. They talk with one another just about every day. Talked about how he really enjoyed working with Alberto Del Rio. He had a lot of fun teaming up with him. He also talked about the differences between FCW and NXT. FCW, it was a lot more loose. It was more laid back. NXT, as far as he's concerned, you know, heaven forbid you're a wrestler that gets signed to a WWE developmental contract and you're reporting to the training facilities, you're going up to NXT. He feels that the NXT roster is spoiled in a big way, because for those that are not familiar with the independent circuits, they're probably saying to themselves, well, hey, I'm on NXT, you know, say, well, this is pretty much how all the indie shows are going to be. And he stressed that indie shows are not like NXT. There's no cameras, there's no bright lights, there's no catering. It's a completely different beast. He feels that the NXT roster, as a result of that, they're being spoiled a little bit because they're not being prepared for the real world that's out there. Heaven forbid their career ends in the WWE, whether it be by a freak accident or they get released. It's a completely different beast out there. At the same time, however, he feels that the people on the NXT roster that's getting the unique opportunity to be on there, they're getting just a little bit of a taste what it's like to be on the main roster, which should make them fight even more and stay hungry even more to want to do right on NXT in hopes that they could get up on that main roster one day. Other interesting notes that I thought was very, very wow, I didn't even know this, is the fact that there was a lot of matches that Ricardo would figure out the finishes for. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys because I really want you all to grab this DVD, but you learn of the many hats that he held in WWE. He didn't just work on calling spots for Alberto Del Rio's matches or whatever. He worked on matches that didn't even involve him because he had a great mind. He has a photographic memory. Like, he could be sitting in and hearing all the different spots that's going to be happening throughout the match. And if it just so happens he's there at ringside for one of those two opponents and they forget a spot, they can just look over at him and he knows exactly what spot. I mean, he has a very great mind for that. Also, as far as it being discovered, him knowing the whole training background, having that training background, being a wrestler, the Divas actually took a liking to him, and it was all courtesy of one Rosa Mendez. It's funny, as there was a previous RF video shoot, can't remember which one it was offhand. I want to say it was probably the Joey Ryan one. Joey Ryan was talking about that experience that he had with Rosa Mendez out in California, and Rosa Mendez was telling him how much she had really enjoyed his work and all that, and she actually had tried to get him a meeting with John Laurinaitis. You guys remember from our Joey Ryan shoot review we did, I told you that part where John Laurinaitis had said to Joey Ryan, that's after Rosa Mendez left, I got a diva that's trying to tell me about talent. I don't need no diva to tell me about talent. What the hell does she know about talent? Here's Rosa Mendez again, and a lot of you guys, you get on her a lot, but here's her name being brought up again. She breaks the ice with Ricardo in a backstage area where he's just minding his own business, keep it to himself, he's eating. Rosa Mendez comes up to him and they start chatting and everything like that, and he gets comfortable to the point where he lets her know that, you know, he knows a thing or two about wrestling. He's wrestled for years. He trained in that field for some years, and basically Rosa told the other girls, and the other girls would start coming up to him asking him if he would be willing to look over their match to see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. So he kind of ended up being a trainer, unofficially, mind you. And it kind of seemed like this is the role that was going on for Ricardo for a good number of years. It was very interesting, but you know, at the end, I think it might have had a lot to do with the changing of the guard, because you hear the stories about Vince McMahon and how he's one of those type of people who really enjoys people that stand up for themselves. And Ricardo told this really great story about how one day in class, I can't remember if it was promo class or character development class, I don't know which class it was, but Vince McMahon was teaching it, and he kept stepping on the foot of Curtis Axel. He kept walking past him during the class, and he kept stepping on his foot. He must have did it about 4 or 5 times. Ricardo's kicking back. He's in the corner. He's just taking notes, but he's seeing what Vince McMahon is doing, and Ricardo's saying to himself, why isn't Axel saying anything? So finally, Vince McMahon, he says to Curtis Axel right there in the middle of the class, do you realize what I'm doing? And Curtis Axel's like, no, sorry, sir. I don't. And Vince McMahon is like, I stepped on your foot. What are you going to do about it? And Curtis Axel's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. And Vince is like, no, I don't want you to be sorry. I want you to stand up for yourself. And Vince McMahon loved being challenged. You got to remember, Vince McMahon was at one point a billionaire, and now he's a millionaire. You know, you can imagine he's surrounded by yes men, people that kiss his ass all the time and all that. He likes people that gets into his face, that's defiant and all that good stuff, all right? And that was the thing with Alberto Del Rio. as well as Ricardo. Whenever they had some type of a problem in a respectful way, they would go to Vince McMahon or whoever. They would stand their ground. And with Triple H, Stephanie McMahon coming into play, as far as gaining more power, you basically saw a changing of the guard. And as a result of that, what would have been cool at one point to stand up for yourself, now if you stand up for yourself with Paul Levesque in charge, there's going to be some serious repercussions. And I'm sure, as you all know, ultimately it had led to Ricardo asking for his WWE release because he just basically had enough of all the bullshit that was going on in the WWE. You know, it was like a situation where he's looking for direction. He wasn't really getting it. They broke him up from Alberto Del Rio, and he's like, okay, well, what's next for me? What's next for my character? Because if you guys don't really have anything for me to do, well, I got an idea. Let me wrestle. And you can genuinely hear in his voice and you can see the twinkle in his eyes how much he wants to wrestle. And WWE, they're like constantly denying him that one thing that he wants the most. So he tries to make up for it in other ways. Well, let me continue to maybe train the next batch of wrestlers. One day they bring him in the office and they say, "Who told you to train?" And he's like, I've been doing this for you guys for like 3 years. Like, since when is it a problem? Now all of a sudden they don't want him doing any type of training anymore. So it's like you see and you hear those little inconsistencies. You say to yourself, what's going on here? Ultimately, I'll tell you what's going on here. Paul doesn't want to have anything to do with this guy. Of course, you guys recall the incident on social media where Ricardo put out the tweet talking about how Triple H had called him a Spanish bumblebee or whatever, as he did feel that that was a derogatory comment. And at the same time, there are some questionable things that the WWE does, which may raise an eyebrow as far as asking the question, is WWE racist? What's going on right here? He did feel that the immigration storyline that was going about with Alberto definitely hit close to home, for the simple fact that I believe it was his sister that had got deported. No, it was his sister's husband that ended up getting deported and got sent back home. His sister, of course, being married to him, went along with him and everything. And, long story short, not to bore you guys, one of their neighbors, like literally living right next door to them in the neighborhood that they were in, they got beheaded. And Ricardo, he was like, fuck this. He did whatever he could. He put his money together, and he got his sister and her husband, got them back in the U.S. on temporary visas or whatnot until they could get permanent residency. But for him hearing and experiencing the whole immigration storyline with Alberto, it hit a little bit close to home for him. But as far as he was concerned, other than that, for the most part, he did enjoy his time working in the WWE. Ricardo, and he admitted this, he said the way WWE had booked him, he said to this day, he finds it very difficult for him to get jobs at other wrestling promotions because these promotions aren't even aware that he's a seasoned wrestler, that he's a trainer, that he's very great at booking matches. They just look at him as, oh, it's the fat guy that is the little ring announcer that was kind of getting his ass handed to him on TV. That's all they see. And, it sucks that he has to go through that, unfortunately. Now, for you TNA Wrestling fans that might be a little bit curious if TNA Wrestling has reached out to Ricardo or vice versa, he said he hasn't heard anything from the promotion. Alberto Del Rio, there was some type of a reach out from TNA to him. He wouldn't elaborate more on that. He did say that as far as future work goes, he's going to be doing some stuff with the AAA promotion. He didn't mention them by their initial letters, but he did let it be pretty known with the strong hints that he was giving that he is going to be doing some work for them. He also brought up the Lucha Underground promotion, saying that whenever the opportunity presents itself, that he's definitely going to be doing some stuff with them. It kind of comes off as if at the time this interview was conducted, it might have been during his 90-day gag order from the WWE. You know, once WWE release you, there's like a 90-day period where you can't appear on TV, you can't do any promotions on North America that might land on DVD and all this other stuff. So thought that was kind of interesting right there. But you know, it really seems as though in due time Ricardo's definitely, I feel, gonna get those opportunities that he wants a lot to shine. He didn't really say anything bad about the WWE, not to the point that he's burned bridges. He definitely spoke about the promotion in a way where, to me, if the opportunity presented itself for him to be able to go back to the promotion, he did say he wouldn't mind going back, but it would have to be under completely different circumstances. I know one thing, they definitely would need to make sure that they get his money right, because that was another key factor that led to his departure from the WWE. And it's surprising to hear this, and I can only imagine where it is now 90 days later after this interview was conducted, but it doesn't really seem like they have a really good grasp as far as their payment structure goes for the people involved with the helping and promoting of the WWE network. He had a problem with that. He also had a problem with his video game paycheck. The money was very, very small. It wasn't like how it was the previous time. A lot of stuff that's going on as you combine that with the whole changing of the guard with Paul Levesque, Stephanie McMahon coming more and more into play. Seems like there's a lot of mismanagement, a lot of disorganization that's going on right now, and it's quite sad. I really do hope it changes in due time, though. But there's more great stories that's on this shoot DVD. I mean, I don't want to bore you with it. It's not about spoiling every single little nook and cranny that's on this DVD, because there's a tons more stuff that's on here that I haven't even talked about. But just what I've said to you guys so far, I think it's really enough for you. I hope it's enough for you to make you want to jump out and grab this DVD. I highly had enjoyed this. It was about 3+ hours long. I wanted more time. I could have listened to Ricardo for hours. Like I said at the very beginning, Ricardo comes off like one of those type of people you could just kick back, have some brews with. You could either talk all things wrestling, or you could just find your way talking into some other stuff. He just seems like he could go in either direction. He seems very versatile, okay? And I tell you, man, he really, really comes off like one of those guys that, honestly, I think WWE did wrong, especially when he tells the story about how surveys would get sent out to WWE employees asking them what type of charitable events that they want to get involved in. And something that's very passionate to his heart is lupus, because he's lost a lot of friends to it over the years. And he's tried to encourage the people at WWE, the higher-ups that is, to try to get behind that, let him go out, let him promote that, because he knows a lot about that. The Don't Be a Bully, Be a Star campaign. His whole thing is, you see him getting his ass whooped on TV a lot. Who knows anything about being bullied more than him? Yet they go with some 6'6" chiseled looking guy that hasn't been bullied a day in his life. Talk about what the fuck right there. So more great stories is on here, but I gotta tell you guys, this DVD definitely gets a pass from us over here at the RCWR show. Highly recommend that you pick it up when you guys get a chance. Hey, is there a DVD you'd like for me to check out? All you gotta do is post those comments down below. And if you also had checked out this Ricardo shoot DVD, I'd love to hear from you guys. Post those comments down below, and if we get enough comments, we'll definitely follow up on a future episode of the RCWR show. Meantime, If it's your first go around checking us out, love to have you subscribe to us so you never miss out on all the great content that we do for you here on a weekly basis. Whether it comes to some really fun and insightful reviews like what we're doing right now, or breaking news, or maybe some fun and insightful interviews, we got a little bit of something for everybody, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. We also got great episodes that you can check out on the downloads. Everything you need is in this episode description. Make sure you retweet this, Facebook it, Google Plus, one of the many ways you can spread the good word about our content.